Greetings. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Richard Dolan Show, where every week we fight the good fight. That is every week that I'm here with you. Not every week. I come here when I can, but I'm very happy to see you all here. I see a bunch of you in the chat room, and I am indeed happy to be here with you. So I've got some slides here, some visuals I want to share with you in just a moment, but I do want to just start by giving a brief homage to the late Honorable Paul Hellyer, who just died a few days ago. Many of you do know that. I was lucky enough to know Paul Hellyer pretty well. I spent a lot of time with him in a variety of venues and situations, and I have to say he was not just a brilliant man. He was not just someone who was really valuable for the UFO cause and community, which he absolutely was. He was also someone who knew an awful lot and talked a great deal about international criminal banking cabals that really run our world. Paul had a lot to say about that too. He was a really extraordinary man and a gentleman to boot, and one of Canada's great sons. I'm sure Canadians are proud of him, but everyone should be proud of him. He was a very good man. I don't remember his exact age. He was in his late 90s, and he did pass away in his sleep. Rest in peace, Paul. It was wonderful knowing you. You will be missed. So I want to talk about something that is important to everyone here, and not simply for those who are into the UFO subject, although it does affect those of us who follow the UFO subject, absolutely. But really dealing with conspiracy theories in general in our society. So I'm going to introduce a couple of slides here to you. Let's just jump right in. So Google has a unit within it called Jigsaw. And Jigsaw has a mission. And this, if you go to Jigsaw's splash page, you will see this image here, creating a safer internet for a safer world. And because we all want to be more safe, you go through the website, and I'm just going to read this. So they talk about upholding technology as a force for good. Google's Jigsaw says, we look for high impact interventions. Interventions, that's an interesting word they use. We're focusing on helping a specific group of people, journalists, civil society, or activists, for example, makes the internet and society stronger and safer for everyone. Our focus areas address some of the most complex challenges facing open societies, and they go into all of that. Go right to their page. One of them, of course, is disinformation. They're really concerned about disinformation. As disinformation campaigns, they write, become more sophisticated, we're building new technology to strengthen our collective defenses. So yeah, let's defend against disinformation. And now I'm going to introduce you to another organization you may have heard of called RAND. RAND is, I don't know if they are the oldest, they are certainly one of the oldest and certainly one of the most prestigious U.S. defense intelligence think tanks that exist. They've existed since the 1940s. RAND does it all for the defense industry. Let me just go to the next little. So if you go to their research areas, trending topics, you can see there's all the stuff they're into. RAND is into everything. You can check out their website, and I will point out the division within RAND that Google's Jigsaw connected to is this one here. That's the National Security Research Division of RAND. So just stop and think. So you got Google's Jigsaw division, which wants to protect you from disinformation. They teamed up with RAND for a particular purpose. What is that purpose? This is what Jigsaw asked RAND. How can we better detect the spread of conspiracy theories at scale? So let me just, get into what at scale means. That's actually a very important element of all of this. So it's one thing to have a team of thousands upon thousands of human sensors scurrying through the web looking for bad think, and disinformation and conspiracy theories. Like that, no, you can't have enough people to do that. It's impossible. So they're talking about at scale, and that's obviously using algorithms, increasingly better forms of artificial intelligence to figure out ways of hunting these things down. And Rand actually, earlier this year, some months ago, produced a report, I'll get to that in just a second, by which they got into it. So anyway, let me just go back and share a couple of other slides here with you. There we go. So this has not gotten a great deal of attention in the media. These are like 4 of the main headlines. 2 of them are from one website and a couple of others where they talk about it. When I did a search on it earlier today, I just basically I searched out Google, Jigsaw, Rand, conspiracy theory, basic thing. I searched it out. There's almost nothing there. Just a couple of those headlines. And something I did this from my website, Original and Members, just a week ago. I talked about this. That turned up. That was one of the top hits. So my little website, it's not like we have all that much traffic. So there's very little about this that is being discussed anywhere. And that in itself is interesting. And certainly no mainstream media attention whatsoever, like zero from mainstream media. So what is this all about? Well, I'm going to just direct your attention here to, I think this is one page where you can download the PDF. I created a link below here. You can actually go and access the full 108-page report that Rand produced for Google's Jigsaw. Google paid Rand to do this. Rand produced a report, and this is the title of it. It says Detecting Conspiracy Theories on Social Media, and they go on. And there's a lot in here, and I'm going to talk a bit about this just because it's so it's very fascinating. Just a little side note on conspiracy theories in general. Like, it's an amazing thing. Like, we've been hearing about conspiracy theories for many years, but when you really think about it, it's only in the last, decade that we hear about conspiracy theories. It's almost all the time. It's like all of these talking heads everywhere, mainstream, little stream, toss out this word conspiracy theory. I mean, to the extent that they actually think this is a real thing. And I will simply remind most of you, I'm sure a lot of you are on ball with this, the phrase conspiracy theory. All right, so I have looked into this, and for a while I wasn't sure. So it wasn't invented for the first time by the CIA like I once thought. About 5 years ago, I thought, it looks like the CIA invented it. They did, however, really bring it to life. So there were a couple of earlier examples from many, many, many decades and generations ago where it was used. Hardly ever, certainly wasn't in popular parlance at all. CIA created a memo in 1967. This is just three and a half years after the assassination of John F. Kennedy, President Kennedy. And in this particular memo, it's been cited. You can research this on your own. Don't take my word for it. But they created a memo on the unfortunate spread of alternative theories about the assassination of the president. Because even in 1967, there were people who were like, the Warren Commission report, something not right about that. And so what the CIA, they were concerned about this. They were concerned about the spread of alternative narratives to the official version of what happened on that day. And essentially, this was a memo that offered, you can almost say, tips on how to kneecap all unwelcome alternative theories about the assassination of the president. And in that, they introduced this phrase, conspiracy theories. And but so it sort of percolated along at a lower level in the 70s and 80s and 90s. But it really does seem in the last decade, it has just gone full on. Kind of like the way fake news has in the last 5-6 years as well. Like what's interesting about the fake news idea is how, remember before 2015 or so, people did use the phrase fake news, and it was exclusively used against the establishment media, like against, remember there was a journalist named Amber Lyon who worked for CNN back during the Arab Spring of 2011, and she talked explicitly after she went rogue. She left CNN. She's like, this is BS. I'm out of here. And she talked about how CNN explicitly, literally created fake information at the request of the United States government, and she said foreign governments. That's kind of interesting, right? And so, back in those days, I would talk to crowds about, fake news coming from the corporate establishment media. And somehow those guys turned it around starting 2015, 2016. And now they just use it against us. They just use it against the alternative media. And, it's an amazing thing. Same with conspiracy theories, had kind of a similar history in the sense that, you hear a lot of younger folks, in my opinion, like millennials, younger than me, who'll just toss out the phrase conspiracy theory all the time in this unironic way. It's like, what makes it a conspiracy theory as opposed to just a theory? You know what I mean? Just like you have an idea about something, and you have an idea that doesn't comport with the established, Soviet-style narrative that everyone's supposed to believe about things these days. So you have a different opinion, and that's labeled as a conspiracy theory. And honestly, to my mind, it is absolutely nothing more than a smear used to disable anyone who just doesn't think the right thoughts, according to the establishment. And I think it's a nasty phrase, the way it's being used. And I think a lot of the people who use it, like I think they don't realize, you're using the phrase conspiracy theory to debunk something, and actually you are doing the work of the CIA, which actually has promoted that phrase. So that sounds like a conspiracy theory, except it's true. What a world we live in, right? So let me just share a couple of things here with you. So anyway, Rand gets this assignment from Google Jigsaw. So what did Rand do? What they did was actually, I got to give them credit for this. They did something that was very innovative, a very smart way to go about finding these things at scale. And what they did was linguistic analysis. And by that, simply, you think about all social subgroups. They've all got different ways that they talk to each other, like different phrases that are common, different go-to concepts and things like this. And so what Rand did is they identified for this test for Google Jigsaw 4 conspiracy groups. I'll get to those in just a second. And what they did, though, was to identify typical language features that each of these groups use. Certain phrases, certain manners of expression. And it really is true. Like most groups can probably be, it's almost like identifying someone by their facial recognition or by the way they walk. There's a lot of little telltale signs that we give away that we're not even aware of. And that includes in our manner of discourse with like-minded people. And so Rand did this, and then they spent a lot of time in this 108-page paper really going over how proud they were of the system that they developed. And in fact, they spend most of the time really talking about how this works. And it struck me as ingenious. I'm sure some of the more linguistically or tech-minded among you, when you go through this report, I'm no doubt you'll find more in there that I was able to find, really not being my real strength. But it's very obvious that they did an ingenious and smart way, and probably a fairly effective way. They certainly said it was effective way of identifying conspiracy theories across the web at scale, just like Jigsaw asked, at scale. That's the key. You can't just use human sensors. You want to be able to use this with algorithmic detections. And this is what Rand essentially developed for Google. It's really kind of an amazing thing. So they studied 4 conspiracy groups, and then they developed recommendations for them. So I'm going to show you what the 4 groups were. Here they are. There's all kinds of groups that are not your run-of-the-mill mainstream groups. These are the four that Rand picked. So the anti-vaxxer groups, that's kind of a big one these days, as we all know. You've got, then there was another group that it's almost funny in retrospect, the COVID origin dissenters. In other words, this is all done a year ago, and these are the folks who questioned the narrative that could not be questioned a year ago, and for all the time that COVID broke out, which was, did that thing really come from the bat soup or some kind of bat thing, or did it come from the Wuhan lab in China? You know, for the longest time, you think about just how crazy this is. A virus that, at least on the pretext of which, turns the entire world upside down, inside out, destroys the old society that we had, right? And no one's allowed to talk about where the hell that thing came from. So that group was studied by Rand. What's ironic about that, of course, now is ever since Jon Stewart did his thing on Colbert, where Colbert basically lost it, here's Jon Stewart, completely trashing that whole theory. Of course, many people before him obviously were on top of this. So now it's okay to talk about the virus emanating from the Wuhan lab. And in fact, you've got top, highest level molecular biologists, virologists, people studying this who are like saying things like 95%, 99% probability plus that this thing came out of a lab, probably a Chinese lab. So now they're saying it. But anyway, so Rand studied those people, that conspiracy group. Gee, what happens when a conspiracy group is turned out to be like that, what they believe is true? There's a question for you. Another group they studied was they called it the white genocide. They acronymed it WG group. So folks who believe that there's a replacement going on with white people. So that was another group that Rand studied. And then the last one were UFO believers. They called it the alien visitation group. Those are the four that Rand studied as a way to develop their program, their algorithm. So now I've got a couple of things to say about what they thought about the UFO. I'm not going to get into the other three things here, by the way, so don't ask. I'm not doing it here. YouTube's already looking for reasons just to, hit me again, demonetize, whatever. I don't have the fight in me with YouTube. If I get an account that's active on another platform, that could definitely happen. I think about this a lot. I haven't done it yet. I haven't taken the leap to stream elsewhere, but at some point it's just going to have to happen. I just get off my butt and just do it. But right now I'm on YouTube, so here we are. So I'm going to go through a couple of things in the report from Rand. This is actually quotes right out of it. So Rand uses a phrase that they're really proud of called truth decay. Get it? Tooth decay, truth decay. Ha ha. That's a good one, Rand. So what they talk about is they describe it as a shift in public discourse away from facts and analysis caused by four interrelated drivers. And I'm going to read them. 1, an increasing disagreement about facts and analytical interpretations of facts and data. 2, a blurring of the line between opinion and fact. 3, an increasing relative volume and resulting influence of opinion and personal experience over fact. 4, a declining trust in formerly respected sources of factual information. Now let's look at the first three. The first three is anything that you could just say to someone you disagree with. It's like you're getting your, you're blurring your opinion and fact. Sorry. Like, who doesn't do that? What group doesn't do that? Like, they're starting with this assumption that, certain authoritative groups, I'll get to that in a second, have access to authoritative fact and data as opposed to, I want to point something out here. So they're saying personal experience. So number 3, an increasing relative volume and resulting influence of opinion and personal experience over fact. What the hell are they just saying here? It's like somehow your personal experience, like what you see and what you experience, is like, as some people will say, your lived experience. That's not relevant to fact. That's like saying, don't believe your eyes. Don't believe your ears. Don't believe the, the cognition in your brain from what you can learn and think about. No, just listen to what we tell you. That's what it sounds like to me. So moving right along, let me just go to the next slide here and just share this with you. This is another statement out of the paper. Rand says, conspiracy theories reflect both a move away from factual truth and declining trust in factual sources, replacing trustworthy information with untrustworthy information. Okay, now this sounds identical to the language that you would get in the old Soviet Union. I mean, how is that any different? They apparently are the arbiters of what is trustworthy information and what is untrustworthy information. And they intend to eliminate, apparently, all examples of untrustworthy information. I don't think I have a slide here for this, but they talked about, how was it? How social media has made information, and including conspiracy theories, easy to share, worldwide. And so what Google and Rand are going to do, they're going to make that space safe for you. Because, conspiracy theories, you got to stay away from those, of course. So regarding UFOs and alien-related conspiracy theories, I hate using that phrase. Like, you say UFO and alien-related research, why not just say that? Or even theories, but they have to make it a conspiracy theory. But anyway, relating to that stuff, the folks at RAM, they didn't really have anything of substance to say about these at all, actually. They're just looking at linguistic analysis. But you get an impression from going through this, and again, I encourage you to do this, that the folks at RAND saw the UFO, the alien conspiracy theory, of the four that they did, as probably, they obviously saw it as misguided, but ultimately, in their opinion, not nearly as dangerous as the other three, and especially not as dangerous as the anti-vax ones. That was absolutely number one on their list. You really could see they spent a lot of energy going after that group, or at least, I don't want to say going after, but talking about the harm from those groups. And by the way, harm is a word that really appears quite a few times in this report. So they really want to protect you from harmful content. So I'm going to go, this is a big mass, a wall of text here. I'm not going to read this whole thing. You can screenshot it now. You can screenshot it later when this is no longer live. But I will just go over a little bit of it. So they're talking about alien conspiracy speech. This is interesting in a way because it gives you an idea about how they actually go through identifying the various groups in terms of linguistic analysis. So that's really quite interesting. But essentially what they're just saying in terms of any kind of substance is that, to me, this is the part I thought was noteworthy. So unlike the anti-vaccination and WG conspiracies, there was little talk from detractors opposing any theories. Another feature of this data set was the expression of clearly developed conspiracies about government cover-ups of alien visitation. Comments suggest there is a large distrust of the government and what the government is telling the American public. And then at the bottom, I just bolded, regardless of the truth of this conspiracy theory, it seems much more innocuous than the other conspiracies we studied, with no antisocial component or direct threat to public health. I'm going to get into that in just a second. Actually, I'll get into it right here because this to me, this is the only other part where they go in any kind of detail about alien visitation conspiracy theories. I'll just read this whole thing. So they're talking about us versus them methodology and thinking. So it's very obvious from the folks at RAND that us versus them formulations are not good. That's a bad thing. That's in fact, to me, that's the key reason why they did not seem to look at the UFO people as dangerous or as dangerous as the others, because they didn't detect this very, very harsh us versus them dichotomy. And I'm just going to read. Although antisocial discourse involves the creation of social others, as in-group and out-group paradigm. Not all language markers for us and them are inherently antisocial. And then they go on, and they're basically saying conspiracy theorists generally talked about aliens with positivity and excitement. And so they go on to say, like, in truly antisocial, us versus them paradigm, it gets a little more intense. And so, but not with the UFO people, apparently. So now what's interesting to me about that is that, you know, let's just say that aliens are here. Some of us believe that. Some of us believe that there are other beings that are here. Now, if you, it looks like the folks that they investigated, to me, I mean, I almost got like, did they just do all California ufology? No offense to my friends in California on the West Coast, but honestly, like, they were basically apparently looking at a lot of love and light and, you know, wonderful, let's welcome the space aliens. That's the impression you get from reading Rand. But you get this sense. Now, this is just a policy recommendation. This is not Google's implementation, so it's just coming out of Rand. But this idea that you don't want to have hostility to these other beings, and if like, you got to ask yourself, like, why? Who the hell would care if aliens don't exist, or if aliens aren't here on Earth? Like, why would they care if UFO believers have hostility toward alien invaders? You know, at the most, Rand could just say, well, you know, they believe in this thing. It's not true. So what do you have to worry about? It's not like UFO believers are going after actual people. They're going, if they have a problem with aliens or an alien invasion, why in God's name should Rand or anyone else care? Unless it's real, unless you don't want to have that hostility. I mean, I don't know how else to say this, but it struck me as a bit odd. They don't really go any farther along than that, but good grief. So anyway, Rand gets into some, I guess you could say, provisional solutions of how to deal with the problem of conspiracy theories and conspiracy thinking. It's very interesting. They come up with 4 basic recommendations, and I'm going to add these back in here. It sounds really sweet and gentle, the way that they use the language. I want to point this out. So they write, and there's a lot of detail within each of these. I'm just giving you the bare bones titles here. So first is transparent and empathetic engagement with conspiracists. Well, that doesn't sound bad. They're transparent. They're empathetic. We'll come back to that. Second, providing corrections to conspiracy-related false news. Okay. 3, engagement with moderate members of conspiracy groups. And 4, addressing fears and existential threats. So again, you know, you can go in the report, you can read the details. So all of it sounds gentle, sounds cooperative, but keep in mind a couple of things here. First, this is just an intended policy paper. This is not policy itself. This is a policy paper, and it's dealing with a huge portion of the American population. So it's really not likely that they're going to use overtly incendiary language in dealing with citizens. At one point in the paper, Rand says, you know, we did our own survey on this, and we determined that possibly around 1/3 of all Americans believe in some kind of conspiracy theory. That's probably understating the fact, but 1/3, that's almost half the electorate. There's millions and millions and millions of people. Like, how do you, you know, it's one thing if you've got like a tiny sliver of people who believe something that's really far out there that no one's going to take seriously. You got massive millions and millions of people who believe in theories that Rand calls conspiracy theories and, you know, in inattention to fact and that type of thing. So they're not going to just, at least I wouldn't expect them to come out with a hammer and say, we got to take these people down, these dangerous citizens. No. And it doesn't mean that the reality won't be much harsher than the writing. You know, always keep that in mind. But mainly, the main takeaway that I get when I read this is just, it's so damned intrusive. I'm going to show you these again. You know, they're basically, they intend to enter these various communities and many others. These are 4 examples. Obviously, there's the 9/11 group. There's countless other groups that are like off the mainstream, that don't believe mainstream corporate establishment journalism that's, intertwined in a mockingbird system with the intelligence community, as it's been for the last 75 years, as anyone's researched this knows front and back, So they enter all of these different groups. And of course, they're way behind the CIA and other intelligence agencies anyway, that have been doing this for even longer. But how exactly... They talk about being transparent. How are they going to do that transparently? Is someone from Jigsaw going to enter a chat room for UFO people or for Vax people or, any other group and say, yeah, I'm actually from Google's Jigsaw division. Let me get this off here. I'm from Google's Jigsaw division. Just wanted to give you a heads up. You're kind of engaging in a conspiracy theory that's probably not in accordance with real factual data. Let me help you out there. Yeah, that's going to go over well. To me, transparency means you can tell them who you are, who you work for. So this is Rand's policy recommendation. Pretty sure that's not going to happen. So the other one, providing corrections to conspiracy-related false news. That strikes me as something that YouTube does all the time, like to my videos, like anytime I talk about something I'm not supposed to, they put a little disclaimer. We all know alien abductions are a crazy theory, and they put that right in there, whatever. So that might be their real-time corrections. The thing about engaging with moderate members of conspiracy groups, and that's a little more interesting, that's basically overtly putting it out there, aren't they? We're going to have you infiltrate and flip members of groups, basically influencers. Yeah, I mean, this is nothing new, obviously, so that's why they're bringing it up. But essentially, they're, how else do you interpret it as anything other than infiltration of groups? And clearly they're going to have to do that in a covert way, or it's just not going to work. No one's going to say, "Oh yeah, I've been talking with the good people at Jigsaw, and I've changed my opinion. Big Brother is good. Black is white. White is black. War is peace. Freedom is slavery. Yay." And then this whole thing about addressing fears and existential threats. They've got their whole thing on there, and it just honestly seems like once you get past the bureaucratic writing, which is a joke, in itself, none of this is realistic. None of it is anything that seems credible or plausible in any remote way. Like, it's just not. So, but what they will do, so that's their recommendations. I have a feeling Google will probably take their own recommendations. They're going to say, "Thank you very much, Rand. Thanks for the algorithms. We'll have our people tweak that stuff for you real well and make it about 100 times better than you could ever imagine, because we're Google. We're Jigsaw. We can do this." And, obviously, you got to imagine some of the other solutions that Google will come up with is, you hide information, you bury things, you bury search results. It's probably one of the first things that they'll do is just hide this stuff. And, who knows what else, work with PayPal to take off their ability to get paid, or, all the things that they're already doing right now in conjunction with Amazon and all the other groups. So really all Google wants is they want to be able to identify the conspiracy theories, and Rand essentially handed them something that, at least according to Rand, they felt very confident. Our system, this thing works, you'll see. So, and if it doesn't work, Google will make it better. They'll fix it, because they will do that. So anyway, here's the thing to keep in mind here. You've got the biggest of big tech. No one's bigger than Google. Remember the days when Google, they said, "Don't be evil"? Remember the days when Google was like, "Yeah, we're going to help you find things on the web." Like that was their job, right? Yeah, they've gone a little away from that thing. So they hook up with probably the most prestigious defense think tank in the world, or at least in the country, in the world. And they're working with them. I mean, Rand does work for every aspect of the intelligence community, the Defense Department. And these are the people Google works with for your safety from bad ideas that you're not supposed to think. that diminish your trust in authoritative sources. Like, did anyone at Google actually wonder, what was that line? Are we the baddies now? did anyone ever really think that? Like, because that's really what they've become. So, I mean, what does Google do? They already manipulate, through YouTube, all of your searches. YouTube is horrible for searches. You cannot search things on YouTube. It's impossible. It's a little better, I have found, when you go out of YouTube and you just use Google. And of course, it's much better still if you just get the hell out of Google search and you use something like DuckDuckGo. You actually will get better results. So they manipulate the search algorithms already. They're already doing overt support for authoritative sources. That is, what is authoritative sources? Simply establishment sources. That's all it is. That's all that it is. And, they will do their bias always toward like internationalist, globalist oriented establishment initiatives, always. And anything that's anti-conspiracy theory. So, and they're going to do this for UFOs. Now, they may not do this immediately for the UFO field. There's maybe more immediate pressing matters that they want to deal with first. But you just think about how swiftly everything's happened in the last few years. Last 2 years, last year and a half. All right, so we're not in, this is not with the breathtaking speed of the Bolshevik Revolution in 1917 or Hitler's seizure of power in 1933-34 or Mao or, the fascist or communist dictatorships. All right, it's true. When they came into power, it was hammer comes down immediately. People get locked up, thrown in the prison. They disappear. They get killed. All right. This is a little different. But here's what's unique about what's happening in our world. This is the first time this has ever happened globally, worldwide, not one country. What we're seeing is happening around the entire world. And it's pretty damn fast. Like everything's happening fast. And among all the other things, the lockdowns, the inability for people to move freely, the inability for people to speak freely. And now we've got Google we got big tech working explicitly with the national security crowd to literally control what you think. I mean, I hate overusing the word literally because like so many people do that, but this is not overusing it. Literally to control what you think for your own safety and protection. By the way, there have been a number of psychological studies that demonstrate over and over again that an excessive commitment to safety really causes psychological problems like neuroses. Like you really can be too safe. I did a whole podcast on this on my website a couple of weeks ago. I think I called it Safety Last. And if you're a member of the site and if you haven't checked it out or listened to it, go right ahead. It's on there. But an excessive commitment to safety is unhealthy for you, but it's very useful to justify the imposition of totalitarian solutions to problems of social control. Like safety is a great, you just scare the hell out of people, make them live in fear. And you say, well, we can make you safe. And we're going to do that by controlling the misinformation or the hate speech or, the other bad things you're not supposed to think. And we're going to do that for your benefit. And every dictatorship that's ever existed has always justified what they do for your benefit, for the safety of the people. Like there's no exception to that. They've all done that. So I'm going to shift gears a little bit. But this is all related. So last night I was on Fade to Black with my good pal, Jimmy Church. Often I'm on with Jimmy. We're very good friends, as many of you probably know. So I did a show with him and that was a lot of fun. It was interesting. As always, I go a little crazy on those shows. Jimmy brings it out in me. That's all I can say. So we talked about a new UFO series by the producer, very famous Hollywood producer, J.J. Abrams. And I'm going to talk about that. I'm going to just show you the screen. This is the show UFO. You can actually see the first episode. There's 4 episodes in this in total. So it's a 4-episode thing. This has just come out. It's episode 1. You go to Showtime, their YouTube channel. Episode 1 is freely available. And then if you have a Showtime subscription, if you can get away, you can watch the other 3 episodes. I was lucky because Jimmy Church, he's like, when Jimmy Church is your friend, it's like being friends with the mafia. He's just like, he gets me anything I want. So Jimmy was able to get me the 4 shows. I watched them all. Blew through one of them kind of fast, but I saw the other 3 in total. And we talked about it last night. So anyway, I would say go check out, certainly episode 1 is interesting and it's well done. And before I do have a critique of it, and I'm going to share it because it's relevant here. But before I do that, I just want to say, like, any of the people who participated in that, John Greenwald, Leslie Kane, Ralph Blumenthal, George Knapp, who am I missing? There's other, they all comported themselves well, in my opinion. So this is not directed against any of those people who participated in that. And if they hear this, I just want them to know that. But I will say, so I watched the first episode and I thought, this is good. This is actually above average for a UFO treatment. They did a nice job to talk about the Phoenix Lights of 1997. They talked about the Chicago O'Hare case of 06 and made it very clear. And there was some new information in there too, by the way, and that's all worthwhile. But they made it very clear that UFOs are a real thing. They're not make-believe. So that's the world we're in. We're kind of at this place now where the mainstream, really since 2017, we're able to say, yep, it's a real thing. People aren't delusional. They're not making it up. There are extraordinary things that witnesses are seeing. So, okay, that was great for that episode. And then episode 2, that was the one I scrubbed kind of fast, but that was good. That dealt with the Tic Tac UFO encounter. It dealt with the USS Roosevelt encounter from 2014, 2015. And they really go into some detail there. And that also looked very good. That was the one that I looked at the least. I will admit that, but it looked quite good. According to Jimmy, he saw it. He said he thought it was really good. So, okay, there you go. So then you got episode 3. And episode 3 is where things start getting really hairy. So episodes 3 and 4. Feeling that I had in episodes 3 and 4 is like, it's like they spent episodes 1 and 2 inflating this balloon. And then they spent episodes 3 and 4 deflating the balloon. So at the end of it, you're left with, what the hell am I left with? So in episodes 3 and 4, they basically talk about and make a really provocative and in-your-face case that UFOs, not just the current UFOs like the Tic Tac or the Roosevelt sightings or any of that, but even going back through the 20th century, are U.S. black budget tech as a psyop, I think originally against the Soviet Union in the Cold War. And I'm not kidding. That was actually the argument that was put out there. If you got a Showtime account, go check it out. Don't take my word for it. Now, and that includes Roswell. That includes presumably like the whole UFO history of the 50s and 60s. And furthermore, the thesis being that UFOs have been actively promoted by the United States government as a way to hide their actual secret technology programs. Now, we all know, most of us following this field, we know the story of Richard Doty and Paul Benowitz from the late 70s, early 80s. Okay, so that is an example. This is a true example of an intelligence officer working on orders to keep a very perceptive witness away from examining top secret technology that he was seeing out of Kirtland Air Force Base. And according to everything Doty said, and he said, I basically let Paul believe it was UFOs, and I encourage that belief. So that's disinformation, and that's done from causes of, for the purpose of national security, and people can think what they want about that, but to take that example and then essentially put that across the UFO phenomenon writ large and say that this was actually the history of UFO phenomenon in the 40s and 50s and 60s. Okay, there I'm going to call BS, because that's not the history at all. Because what that's saying is that U.S. black budgets invented flying saucers back in the 40s to screw with our nuclear sites, to screw with our Air Force, to screw with our Navy for, 75 years now. And on top of which, as I have done, and some of you have done, you go through the documents and declassified literature on this, and you see documents of the highest level, some of them going to the White House and going to the Secretary of State and going to the director of the CIA, detailing like highly provocative, head-scratching UFO encounters that are just getting everyone worked up. And to state that this is a psyop for all of those years, that some group within the U.S. military or establishment is doing that to screw or to test their technology. No, I'm calling BS, and I'm just going to say no. So I took real exception to that. And, you know, if you've got a situation where, as it sure as hell looks like, UFO phenomenon represents technology and beings that don't come from around these parts, which is what, not just me, huge numbers of highly sophisticated analysts for years and years and years and years have thought the same thing. And it's not easy it's not difficult to think that when you look through the evidence. So if there are other beings that are here, and now you're calling the entire like UFO history all just disinformation directed as a psyop, well, I'm going to call that disinformation. I'm going to call that thesis disinformation. It's like if there are actually aliens here and they're skulking about every single night over your neighborhood, which they often are, and you're creating an argument, a slipshod, weak argument at that, saying, no, it's been our black budget tech all along. That's the disinfo. And by the way, that was the stuff that was being suggested in the 1950s by government sources from time to time. They would often say this. They'd be like, well, you never know what we're working on. It's secret. I mean, even Kenneth Arnold back in 1944 really wondered, maybe those flying saucers are something we built. This is always out there. It's always percolated as a potential answer and sometimes actively promoted by the United States Air Force and other agencies way back in the olden days. All right, so that's the disinformation. That's the disinfo. Those are the lies. Those are the deceptions. And then the other part of where this series went, this UFO series by J.J. Abrams went, was they got into abductions in episode 4. And it's really kind of the same thing. And really what you are left with is this very strong psychosocial explanation for abductions. And don't get me wrong. I think a psychological, sociological explanation for looking at abductions is valuable, and you got to do it. You have to look at all of these different factors that are in play. All right? There's a lot of the things that happen in the abduction phenomenon do seem complex, and they do sometimes seem like culturally related, and we need to understand that. Having said that, this episode went so far as really, they talked about the Betty and Barney Hill case. It talked a little bit about Travis Walton and a little bit about a couple of other lesser known cases. Charles Hicks and Calvin Parker, the Pascagoula case of 1973 came up briefly. And you are left with the fact that these really probably didn't happen. You know, John Mack was the subject of a lot of episode 4, and it was actually suggested that he just went native. You know that means like Lawrence of Arabia, who he wrote a book about, someone who identifies with the group that he's studying so much that he just loses all objectivity, and that was essentially politely done. They weren't trash talking against John Mack or even Bud Hopkins for that matter, but politely done, politically correctly done, as a way to say, well, you know, he was a smart guy, but he probably got this he got a little overexcited. And so now so the entire 4-part series leaves you with the following conclusions. UFOs are real, but they're not extraterrestrial. They're almost certainly our own tech for the whole period of time, and there are no abductions. Now you think about those 3 fundamentals, and you tell me that that's not disinformation. All right. Now, I'm bringing that in the context of, I talked about Google and Jigsaw and working with Rand for a reason. I'm not here to accuse anyone. I don't know J.J. Abrams. I never talked to him. I don't know what his genuine motivation for doing this was. And I certainly have nothing to say against the people who participated in that series, all right, many of whom are my friends, all right, whom I respect. But what I am saying is that when I look at those 4 episodes, what was that old Cheech and Chong bit? Looks like it, smells like it, tastes like it. Yeah, this looks like disinformation to me. That's what it looks like. Now, is it coordinated with the higher ups? Is it coordinated with the national security state? Did they coordinate this with Rand Corporation or Google or the CIA? Don't know. No clue. But what I will suggest here is that this message that you get in this series, look for that message to be followed up on. All right. Look for that message to be the preferred authoritative message that UFO folks and researchers are going to see moving forward. This is what I think is likely to happen. And I've been talking like this for a while, that, you know, as the UFO subject becomes a little bit more mainstream, it will have to be contained. It will have to be managed in a way so that that people are managed as well, that you don't start getting the wrong ideas. Because the problem has always been with disclosure has always been, if there's ever an announcement, all right, that UFOs are real, if the president ever does it, any president, doesn't matter which president, does not matter which president, if a U.S. president gets on TV and makes a statement that UFOs are real and they are unknown, we don't know what they are, all right, I have always believed that this is a dangerous situation for the established structure of power, because it's going to officially vindicate, or at least let's say will open up the conspiracy question. It's like, how long have you known? But what we can see they're trying to do is go through this fiction of, well, we don't know what these things are. This is a new thing for us. You know, they don't like to deal with the history. The UFO series by Abrams did deal a little bit with some of that history. John Greenwald did a very good job in talking about Project Blue Book. You know, I mean, they got into a little bit of the history, but essentially not a lot of it. You see this siphoning of the history out increasingly. And the reason for that is to prevent questions about conspiracy and cover-up. Because we are now in an era where you're not supposed to believe in conspiracy theories. That much is clear. And what is the biggest conspiracy theory of all time? It's the UFO conspiracy, the UFO cover-up. There's nothing bigger than the UFO cover-up. It is, as Saddam said, the mother of all. It's the mother of all conspiracies. All right? And so as this subject becomes more normalized, which it is, you can see this, I continue to believe that it will be imperative for the established authoritative sources of power to prevent you from going down conspiracy road here. They're just not going to want that, because if that starts becoming validated, that opens the door for sky's the limit, right? So it's a really difficult place for them to be in. It's like they're not going to want to admit, no one's going to want to admit, yeah, we've actually lied about this for 75 plus years. Sorry, guys, we did it for your safety. I mean, if it comes to it, maybe that's what they will say. But the fact is that, you know, I look at this new series, very well done. It's very slick. You know, it's something you would expect from a top level Hollywood producer. It looks good. You know, everything is the way it's supposed to be in terms of how it's put together. Yeah. But it's Legion on a path. You know, there was a special, I mentioned this on Fade to Black last night. By the way, on Jimmy's always nice to me about these, and I will be posting that episode on my side on Richard Olin Members as soon as I'm done here. It's already on Fade to Black. You can listen to that show that I did with Jimmy there, but members of my site will be able to listen to it as well. So go check it out. But in any case, well, what was I even going to say? I just totally lost my train of thought. Doesn't matter. We are in an era where this is it's very, very clear where this is all going. The UFO subject is increasingly going to be managed. It's inherently a dangerous subject, always has been. That is why for up until 2017, the United States government just did total denials of UFOs. They weren't. When did the U.S. government ever encourage belief in UFOs? It's exactly the opposite. It's precisely the opposite. All right. So there you go. That was something else I was going to say, and I just totally forgot. I don't have notes in front of me, so it is what it is. I'm glad I was able to talk about this. I think, you know, we're moving into an era in which the walls, like everyone can see it, the walls are just coming in. And it's got to be our job to resist that the best we can. I'm not saying do anything illegal. I'm not saying anything like that. I am saying keep your mind independent and recognize the structure of information that's coming at us. That is, who owns the information that we're getting? Well, Google controls so much of it. You've got legacy tech that's controlled by just a handful of corporations. We all know that. You got Facebook, you got Amazon, all of these and related organizations are increasingly managing what we are allowed to access. One of the things that was actually galling when you go to the Google Jigsaw website is they actually talk very proudly about how we believe in an open society and we try to encourage people to get access to information that, you know, governments don't want them to get. Well, yeah, I mean, if U.S. is trying to do a regime change against a certain government, then yes, Google Jigsaw undoubtedly will try to facilitate that. But if you're in the West, no, they don't do anything like that, and we all know it. It's like we have entered an age of truly Orwellian doublespeak. Like they say one thing and they mean exactly the opposite. Like, and it's just right there in our faces. It's right there in our faces. So, I expect more of this to come, not just the UFO. It's like the other three groups that Rand mentioned. Well, I don't know if they're going to go after the COVID origin people anymore, since, you know, you're really going to go after people that have been validated by your own corporate establishment, mainstream? Probably not. But there's a lot of groups that they are going to be targeting, and Google's going to be very, very good at this. And, you know, you could see easily all methods of collaboration between Google and independent producers as well. There's all kinds of possibilities for behind the scenes infiltration of all kinds of groups to get control of influencers and the like. And this is a thing, like, so what I was saying is you've got to know the structure of the information coming to you. You got to be aware. Where's it coming from? And as I've said many times, look, the number one thing to understand is you've got to read the information. You got to check out the information itself. Like, content to me is the most important thing. Is the information coming useful? Is it accurate? Is it relevant? Like, right? But we have to be very astute as to where it's coming from, obviously. And what are the agendas that these people may have? So there you go. Interesting stuff. Well, that's about all I've got for you. If you like what you see here on this channel, hey, help me out. Subscribe to my channel. You know, recently I hit 100,000 subscribers. Yay, that was great. It's awesome. I got to get my little plaque from YouTube. Maybe I'll ask my my YouTube manager. If Lori's out there, she can tell me. But I actually don't know. But we broke 100,000 recently. That was awesome. Let's keep it going. You know, it's up to me to keep producing content. I know. But hey, if you like what you see here, subscribe. If you really like what I'm about, you can always go to Richard Dolan Members, and there's a lot of free content there. You don't have to subscribe to go there, but there is a lot of content that I do produce for that site every week. That is where I do most of my work these days. It's a nice space for me. So there you go. So by all means, subscribe to the channel, click on the notifications, all that good stuff, and check out my channel at Richard Dolan Members. And that's all I got for you. I want to thank everyone for being here. I'll catch you all again real soon. And remember, let us keep fighting the good fight. Later.